When everything shut down, I was sort of in disbelief. I remember the day before everything shut down, a parishioner came to me in tears saying, this could be the last time I receive the Eucharist in a long time. And it had never hit me, the possibility of shutting down. And at that moment, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, she'd be right. And was just thinking about, like, what would that look like? How would I function as a priest if people can't come to Mass and be given the sacraments? So when it happened the next day, on March 17th, I was just shocked, incredibly sad. There was a sense of, like, panic of, like, how do we still minister to people in this capacity? And so there's just a sense of urgency to try to find ways to still bring the Lord to people. And it was a strange thing to go through, for sure.
So my first reaction was just kind of being numb, just because, I think a lot of people can agree with me that, like, we didn't really feel like it was happening, like it didn't really feel real. And I was serving as a missionary in Ireland when everything went down, and so I remember sitting at the kitchen table, and our bishop, who we lived in a community with, kind of told my entire team, like, you need to call your parents, like, it's time to fly home, like, things are really bad. And even then, like, we had to pack up our house within 12 hours, and we were in cars on the way to the airport, and still, like, none of it felt real. So I think a lot of people can agree with that, either numb feeling or, like, and then 2 seconds later anxiety hitting, and then, yeah, so just kind of like you felt like you were in a movie. It didn't really feel real at all. And just the challenge of getting home, that was a whole nother mountain to climb. But God is good, so.
I'm going to be honest, I was very skeptical that they were even going to do it. Before they even considered shutting down, I was very skeptical and didn't think they would do it. We've been through so many other viruses before within the last few years. I mean, at least in the time I've lived, we've been through H1N1, we've been SARS, we've had West Nile. So my thought was, this will be kind of like any other ones. Maybe we'll do a little bit of proactive, things. But I didn't realize they were actually going to shut down. So I was shocked, like many, and confused, and just I couldn't believe that they were actually going to shut down. That we were shutting down everything.
The week that everything shut down, that the world kind of came to a stop, I was out of town on spring break visiting family, and I received the email saying that school would be closed for another couple weeks following spring break. And I was excited because I thought, wow, more desk time, more office time to prepare for Holy Week. I really did think that, the shutdown would be over within a month, and then that month stretched into 2 and 3 and 4, and it kept going.
I was in shock. I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe it was happening. And then I felt kind of panicked of, well, what am I going to do with my kids? And how do we carry on now? And that was just my initial response.
My first reaction was, when businesses were shutting down and we weren't going to have Mass anymore, was just a real sadness. I remember when I first heard we weren't going to have Mass, I remember just crying, thinking, it was scary, and just kind of how deadly this pandemic was, or was feared to be, and just worried for my family, worried for my friends, but also just so many changes with the kids coming home to learn again, and my husband working from home. But I just remember really just feeling kind of sad and worried.
Boy, it's something to look back and remember a year ago at this time when everything started to shut down. I remember the first inklings we had the weekend before the actual shutdown. we had the first dispensation just from masses that weekend, and already we had half the populace, half the congregation come to church. I remember having to decide about the fish fries beforehand. People are all wondering, would we do that, or would we have the St. Joseph devotions, St. Joseph altar and luncheon that we've already had. So it moved, as they say, like this about bankruptcy, it happened gradually and then all at once. It seemed like that too, like there were just gradually all these decisions, and then things sped up, and then all of a sudden that March 17th, that Tuesday hit, and the church was officially closed. I remember in the first reactions, just there's a lot of excitement, a lot of freneticism, energy, anxiousness on the part of people and myself. But I have to say, and I hope this isn't perverse somehow, but there was actually an enthusiasm in my heart. You know, I've grown up a long time. I'm 47, and thanks be to God, I've lived in peacetime my whole existence. And though there have been conflicts and wars, they've been on foreign shores. And with the exception of 2001, 9/11, and as grave as that was, that certainly impacted us. But there's never been a great suffering, really, or a great sacrifice called upon for me, like in my 47 years of life here in the United States. And so there was a part of me that certainly was not desiring it, don't get me wrong, knowing this was going to lead to deaths and to isolation and closure. But there was a part of me as a priest, as a person, that welcomed the challenge, that thought this could be an actual opportunity, that I finally have something to give to God, or to give to the community, even if it might just be staying at home. There was that sense that I'm going through something that's hitting everybody in the country, everybody in my community. There's a solidarity, we're all one. And again, have never had that event, from the Challenger explosion to, again, 9/11. Important things, but nothing like this, nothing like a war or a major pandemic, right, of something that would really bring everyone together. So there was actually an excitement, not in the sense of a longing for, but just an opportunity, maybe for heroism, not just for me, but for everybody involved, that this was a chance for all of us to become the best versions of ourselves, to really be able to give up something, to sacrifice for a noble purpose.
At first, I think it was a little bit of shock, because it was shock first, and then anxiety about what are we going to do for religious ed? What are my kids going to do for school? Just the planning behind everything closing. What is the plan for that? We've never experienced anything like that before. And I felt like curses. I felt like I abandoned like my religious ed families, and I know that's not the case, but it was just not a great feeling, and shock and surprise and anxiety.
So the biggest challenge was initially deciding how to address spice. The underwriting letters had just gone out the week prior. We didn't know if we should try to have a virtual event, if we should postpone it, if we should just cancel it. But regardless, the money still needed to be raised for the Ed Trust. So that was the biggest challenge, and it was very stressful. And then beyond that, it was a much more minor situation, but the Lumen Christie's, normally the content in those was all event driven, and we didn't have the events to report on and talk about. So that was a minor challenge compared to Spice, but it was challenging.
When you think about that, you would think that most people would say that their jobs got a little lighter, probably not as busy. Especially when you think about at home, all the other activities and other things that people are doing around their hometown, things like that. For me as an IT person, my job did not get any lighter. It got busier. And it's obvious to see because we use technology so much now, and on these past 12 months. We've used video conferencing almost every day. We are watching concerts and movies at home through live streaming. Technology usage has ramped up so quickly in our day-to-day lives. Even those that may not use technology so much are now having to be forced to use it. Even family friends of mine are trying to come to terms with that. So for me at Christ the King, having to come up with technology solutions, the biggest one being how do we provide Mass to those that are at home that may not be able to come to Mass in person.
So trying to figure out what to do for sacraments and like having them in a safe way. Not being able to go to Mass was a really big thing. That was horrible. There was a very long period of spiritual desolation for me, and it's hard to even look back and think about that without being a little emotional. But so that was really, really hard. I was really happy when we were able to have public Mass again. Again, just, feeling like I abandoned my religious ed families, and I know everyone was overwhelmed with having to school at home, so I didn't want to add something extra on top of that. So trying to find that balance.
I think the greatest challenges over these last 12 months has been just to see the loss, like everyone. It's not something maybe profound or particularly personal, but to realize with graduations and weddings, to see all the events that would normally happen in the course of a year, sometimes having to be the pastor, being the one to actually say as the final word that we're not going to be able to celebrate in the same way, or we're going to have to delay First Communion to another time. And so there's a pain in all of that, not wanting anybody to be hurt and not wanting to create more abnormality, wanting that normalness for everybody and knowing that everybody desired the best. But it was really hard as a pastor to have to decide some of those things, especially because I didn't know what tomorrow would bring any more than anybody else. Certainly have no authority other than that given to me by God in the sense of the parish, but I have no moral authority, no scientific medical authority. So having to make decisions in the midst of everything happening, and having to trust in God really in that, and hoping that they're the right decisions, that was probably the most difficult thing these 12 months.
With the shutdown, I lost a lot of routines that gave my work here at Christ the King and even my work at home, that gave my life meaning. I suddenly had no more rehearsals with my choirs. I didn't have any meetings with my cantors, no meetings with wedding couples or funeral families, no more congregation to pray with and sing with on Sundays. And that was really hard. Routines and rituals give our life a framework, a boundary to work within and help us move through life with a positive manner. And when those routines and rituals are suddenly just gone in an instant, it takes some time to recalibrate and get used to the quote new normal. And that was very hard for me. There was a lot of sadness of all the experiences that I lost with people here at Christ the King, as well as my family and my friends.
The biggest challenge, I'm mostly kind of more alone in my job at Christ the King, but I think the biggest challenge was probably trying to keep everything kind of disinfected and clean, and to not, just wherever I went, I was trying to be really careful with washing my hands and using a mask, and so that I wouldn't bring anything to the rectory or to the offices, because I was worried about that.
A priest gives his life up to minister to the people of God. And when there's no people of God to minister to, it's like, what do I do? How do I do this? It was challenging to be just separated from people. in a way that none of us had ever experienced. And so through it all, I missed people. And that's why when we saw on the internet, we printed off the faces of parishioners who sent it in and put it in. That did help. It was weird preaching to empty pews, even though we were recording it. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. It was very difficult, and it actually made me appreciative of things that I had taken advantage of. You just never think, like, sometimes even as a priest, like, oh gosh, I gotta go celebrate mass, or what does this person want now? Because we get tired too and stuff. But it makes you appreciate the work given to you and the people that God has put before you. So, but it was really hard, just not being able to function as a priest as we're called to.
Well, I haven't worked at Christ the King for 12 months. I've only been here a short amount of time, which everyone has been very gracious and loving, helping me get into this new field COVID has been here my entire time of working at Christ the King, let alone working in a parish. Like, I have never worked in a parish before to this extent with a pandemic happening. So challenges have just been like facial recognition. I haven't gotten to see a lot of people. And I've been really involved with the youth group, which has been such a blessing because I've gotten to meet a lot of the parents that way and the kids, the teens, which I'm really excited about. But other than, I would say that's my number one challenge, is just being able to recognize people. It's always been really difficult for me, faces and names already. But
definitely the family time was really great. Nothing on our plate, no sports or activities. After school, we were just together, just being together. And so that was really nice. And also, what was my second one? Oh, yeah. And also, there was a lot of healing in this time, like for me, and some things that came to surface that I didn't know needed to be healed, but God really did that for me, and I asked Him for it too. So it's really nice, tough to get through, but yeah, it was those are the two, healing and family time.
Oh yeah, I could not believe, I was so just grateful and so humbled by the generosity of our entire parish when we needed to raise money for the Ed Trust, even though we weren't having the event. Everybody that responded with huge generosity and huge hearts. I also was so touched, and just it actually made me emotional to see all the photos taped to the pews in the church, so the Padres weren't speaking to an empty church. I thought that was one of the coolest things ever.
Well, there's a couple, but the biggest one probably was growing in my faith in the Lord, and just realizing that Jesus, no matter what the situation is, tells us to not be afraid, and that, like, am I going to live in a spirit of fear, or am I going to, take the necessary precautions, but also just live in a spirit of faith, like trust and faith, and believe that the Lord loves myself and all my loved ones, loves my loved ones more than I do, and that He would take care of us. So I really grew in that deep sense of just everything's going to be okay, no matter what. Just trust in Jesus. It really, really increased my faith. And the other thing was just so much more family time together, which was such a blessing, because my kids we only have 2 left at home, and the other kids are out of the house. So a couple came and lived back home again, and it was just such a blessing to have all that time together, to hang out, play games, and talk. And
well, I've seen that, going from one extreme to another. I think anyone would be angry, a lot of people are angry and don't understand, like, where the Lord's at and all of this mess and stuff. And that's something that I really struggled with towards the beginning of COVID. But now it's so beautiful because I've been able to sit back. I just went on silent retreat, and I got to ask Him just, where was He? And it's amazing because, like, it's been right in front of me the whole time. I mean, I wouldn't work at Christ the King if the pandemic didn't happen, which it's like, yeah, it's really sad that, like, the thing I wanted to last longer didn't last as long as I wanted it to. But then he brought so much fruit from that suffering, that thing that he asked me to lay down in front of him. And I've met so many amazing people here. While it has been hard, I've still gotten to meet a lot of amazing people, and that's been a blessing. And so I would say that's definitely one of my positives. But also just spending more time with family has been a beautiful thing.
I can't really say there's a bright silver lining to the last 12 months. It's been hard. There's been a lot of sadness and mourning and frustration, anger even. But human beings, we are resilient creatures. God made us that way. He gave us the gifts of creativity and curiosity and the desire for communion with Him and with each other. And those gifts and graces, that's what we need each day. He gives us our daily bread that we need. And those gifts and graces will enable us to move through any difficulty that we encounter here in our earthly life.
For me, it has been all about what is God doing for us? What is God trying to show us or teach us in these moments? And I always think that He's always He's always calling us back to Him. And I think in this moment, definitely, the biggest thing I've learned is this world's going to throw a lot of crap at you. And it's going to throw a lot of suffering, a lot of turmoil, a lot of divisiveness, a lot of lies. But I think the one thing that, for me at least, that I can trust on is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He even said to His disciples in the Gospel of St. John, the 16th chapter, where He says, in this world, you will have trouble. And of course, we're seeing a lot of trouble right now. We're seeing a lot of trouble, not just with the virus, but with a whole lot of other things. But at the very end, He says, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And I think if we focus or fix our eyes on our Savior, I think you'll find that He provides peace that is beyond all understanding. He will provide the peace and the comfort that we need, that the world cannot provide.
It was to see people's response in what they would be willing to do to worship. So if you think back a year ago for Holy Thursday, and instead of having people come in to a room with Jesus, have them spread out, we did it in the Adoration Chapel door, where they were out in their cars and they came and spent an hour with Jesus in their car and in His presence still. Just people's faith in the midst of this weird circumstance was very encouraging and beautiful. Another very moving was the parishioners put together you would see those like drive-by birthdays where people would make signs and wave at you and for kids, but they did a drive-by for us, and the cars just kept coming and coming and coming, just to say, fathers, we're here, we appreciate you, we love you. And I remember just being so moved by it, being brought to tears. Same with Father. The other thing is just to appreciate our faith, and as things have lightened up and we've come out of lockdown, how quickly and fragile our faith can be, how quickly it can be taken away, so appreciate it. I can go to Mass every day if I want. I get to go worship God. I get to go to a place where I share beliefs with people, and just to not take that for granted, not to take the people God has put in my life for granted, the people I'm called to minister to. But so as difficult as it was, Jesus' thing, God's thing is He brings good out of evil, or He brings light out of darkness. He's the only one that can do that, and He has. I think He's made so many of us more appreciative of the gifts that we've been given.
It's funny, the Lord does always bring good out of darkness. He's such a magnificent God, and we see that certainly played out in the next few weeks as we have Easter come out of the passion and death of Jesus. He can transform any situation if we can allow him and see that opportunity in his invitation into something good. And I will say what's beautiful, my room is on the north side of the rectory building, and so it looks out into the north parking lot. And almost immediately, people were first recluses, everyone in their homes. But I don't think that, first of all, maybe I was just in my room working more and on the laptop and making phone calls, and so being able to look out into the parking lot more. But I honestly think there was an upsurge in people using the campus. So to look out, especially as spring was coming at the same time, to look out and see families on bikes and walking around together, masks and everything and keeping to themselves, but to see people using the track all the time as a means of exercise, myself included. It was a beautiful thing to see people, families especially, having leisure time to be able to be with each other. I remember a lot of people, Father Boyd's even commented on this, but the same thing happened to me. The number of families that would tell me how grateful they were that they were actually learning how to cook, and they were cooking together, and they were having meals every night with each other. Others who were saying, I don't have to be a taxi driver to every sports event, from soccer to basketball to whatever, that they were able to actually just enjoy their family. And again, on Sundays, weirdly, even though the church was shut down, I received so many different photos of people saying and seeing on the photos them gathered in their family rooms, basements, living rooms, around the television to watch the masses via YouTube and to be together as one, praying with each other, praying with the readings for those who, frankly, the televised mass isn't for everybody. It can be hard to sit through. It's not meant to be a televised event. It's meant to be an in-person event, so it doesn't translate always that well. But people just picking up readings and sharing with each other and what the gospel's meant to them. So for me, I think it was the transformation of family life. I do fear that some of those great blessings may be lost as we are quick to want to run back, in the sense, to all the things that we lost, and feeling that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that we need to get back to everything. But there was at least a measure of time where people seemed to have a joy in the slowness of life and being put together with their loved ones. Even sometimes people would say too close together for those 12 months and working from home. But there was a sublime ability of people to be educating their kids, see what their kids were learning, be a part of that, cook, eat together, walk together, bicycle around campus together, and pray together, that I hope might leave a lasting legacy of what can be, that we don't have to have that impacted maybe by pandemic, but there can be choices, courageous ones in our culture, to say, I'm not going to do those things. I'm going to say no to some of these things so that I can have that intimacy with God and with my family and those closest to me.